So that's the Democratic spin on what happened yesterday, convicting Hunter Biden on 3 counts on his weapons charge and falsifying documents as it relates to that gun. We caught the video. You see it on video, into the dumpster. You see the text messages. It was an open and shut case. There was no reason to have this trial. They had no plan. Abby Lowell, evidently this great attorney, I have no idea if it was even possible to mount a defense for this. And then a lot of people were saying, well, why are they charging him on a gun charge? Would they have charged anybody else? Trey Gowdy have said on that. I think it's important to forensically go back to from when they told us the laptop was fake, Russian disinformation, to now it's used against Hunter Biden in a case from the Justice Department. And the guy that could do that is Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Tom, welcome. Can you give our audience a perspective on how he ended up on trial for gun charges? How hard you had to work behind the scenes to expose this stuff?
Oh, we worked publicly. I mean, we had to sue both the Secret Service and the FBI to find out more details about their cover-up because, as you may recall, there were reports that they showed up at the gun store almost immediately, either the Secret Service or the FBI. We sued the Secret Service, and we got the document saying, well, maybe someone called in a favor because no one quite knew what was happening. And, of course, the FBI was involved. But it all highlighted and exposed to the public, in addition to those whistleblowers, that they were sitting on this case for 6 years. This is 2018 that happened. And
so he knew he was being charged. He was charged for 6 years, or they were investigating for 6 years?
No, they knew what he had done 6 years ago. So Gotcha. They had all the elements of the charge or the crime 6 years ago, and they sat on it for 6 years. And they were dragged kicking and screaming into this prosecution. So the idea that this demonstrates the rule of law is really half-baked. The trial was run well. He was given a fair hearing, unlike Trump, and he was found guilty of real, actual crimes, unlike Trump. But the process to get there was terribly corrupted in the sense that it shouldn't have taken 6 years. And the idea that, somehow he was treated differently, he was. In the sense they waited 6 years. They had him, they had evidence that he was misusing the gun. The gun was dumped. It's the sort of conduct that would have resulted in attention being paid by prosecutors. And they did try to handle it normally, but corruptly, by trying to bury the charge with these other tax charges last year and that plea deal was blown apart because the court just asked some simple questions and the whole corrupt mess fell in on itself.
So people say, well, why the gun? You look at the laptop, the least offensive thing is the gun charge. It's so obvious he's guilty, obviously, and the jury said the same thing. But there's so many other things on there. For example, he's doing these international business dealings. He never registered as a foreign agent, but they let the statute of limitations evaporate on that. And that's only left the gun charge. And remember the sweetheart deal that he had that was exposed by a honorable judge.
This was the bare minimum in order to get the public and Congress and others off their back. And potentially distract from those other issues that you're talking about. And so, the way to think about this, in my view, this is a good step. It's a necessary step. It was right. But it's woefully insufficient given the other criminality that Joe and Hunter are involved in. And the tax charges that are coming up later this year are corrupted because, again, they sat on the charges. They constricted and constrained the investigation to protect Joe Biden. So, Hunter went through this, but I suspect he's going to be pardoned in the end after the election. So he's not going to face any real consequence, I suspect. And if I'm in the new administration and I'm the new president, I'd be directing my Justice Department to do an audit, of how the Justice Department handled this case. And an audit is my charitable way of saying criminally investigate. And then secondly, take a look at all of these Biden issues to make sure they're being seriously investigated. Finally.
Yeah, it would be interesting. So I want you to, Kayleigh McEnany has a theory, and she shared it with Jesse last night, cut 18.
I would be stunned if Hunter Biden did not take a plea deal ahead of the tax charges.
Really?
That is where you start getting subpoena power. Yes, that is where you start getting subpoena power all of over all of these bank accounts that Comer is talking about. He's subpoenaed them on the congressional level, but they start coming into a live court case. There is simply no way they allow that to go to trial when they know they've got, to your point, if you don't want to pardon Hunter, you've got a commutation in your back pocket. You're either going to be a lame duck president or a second-term president, more likely the first. He's going to pardon his son. His son's going to take a plea deal.
What do you think?
I think that's a persuasive analysis. Trey Gowdy made the same point yesterday. He's going to plead guilty and just wait for Biden to pardon him after the election, and the politics of it won't be problematic for Biden. He'll get pinged, but many people won't give him too much guff because, after all, it's his son. And the media will protect him from being held accountable for this investigative process that protected Joe Biden in the end as he threw his son under the bus.
What about these 51 intel agents that signed off on this, that we now know the FBI has confirmed that we all knew for certain, and you've been suing to prove it, that the laptop was real, it was his, was not even manipulated, let alone not be his. So what about that? I mean, what about the 51 people? I mean, should they be held accountable? They are not backing away from from what they signed off on.
Well, they leverage the public good they have, the public benefit they have, which is a security clearance, to mess with the election. And that security clearance and those security clearances, there should be a process and for removing them. And that's something the next honest administration should do. And according to Boss Bragg up in New York, what they did was a crime. The new rule is, Brian, if you manage a story as a politician or help a politician manage a story, that's all reportable on FEC forms. And if you're not reporting them, you're part of a conspiracy, and all of that subjects you to criminal investigation and prosecution. I say that sarcastically, but the point is there's got to be some type of accountability. As they make up crimes against Trump, we have this real evidence of corruption and misconduct by public officials, or people have, as I say, the accoutrements of being a public official, meaning a security clearance, and nothing's done. Right. Something has to be done. There's got to be a consequence. We won't be able, we can talk about reforms and whatever. The best reform is a consequence and prosecutions for government misconduct and criminality.
Right. And now it's this new thing called lawfare, which we're seeing in New York. Do you have a sense of what July 11th will bring for the former president? That's his sentencing day. I know during his screening call with probation officers, he didn't admit guilt. They usually want you to admit guilt and talk about how reformed you are. Trump's not doing that. How does that play into what prosecution will ask for and what the judge will give?
I mean, I fear they're going to put him in jail. I don't know if they will or not, but I fear that, and I don't trust the ordinary course taking place, which would be that he wouldn't necessarily get any jail time. If I were the president, I would be directing my lawyers to exercise every available legal option to end this hostage situation. Judge Merchan and that court process that is corrupted is holding our elections hostage. They're holding our election hostage, and they're abusing Trump and his civil rights. And federal courts, all the way up to the Supreme Court, in my view, should intervene to shut it down.
So right now, you don't think his lawyers are doing enough? Tom, you don't think his lawyers are doing enough?
I don't know what they're doing. I'm just saying if I were in Trump's shoes, I wouldn't wait for Merchan to put me in jail before I did something about it.
Right, I just don't know what legal recourse you have.
It's so wired and rigged, and to me the damage is ongoing. He's currently has a gag order against him. His freedom is somewhat restricted as it is, and everything he says can and will be used against him in a sentencing. I mean, our campaign, our presidential election has been hijacked by Judge Merchan in an improper way, but for non-crimes. And, all those issues they have on appeal, I would just bring it up to the Supreme Court and say this is all politicized, and, you let terrorists come in and get habeas corpus support. Can you give some of the benefit of the doubt to a former president and current candidate who's being abused for unprecedented applications of the law here? My gosh.
I mean, it would be
I'm
unbelievable.
About this.
Yeah.
I can't believe we're in this situation, and the federal courts have got to do their job.
And one guy who let everybody know he's a Democrat, who gave to Joe Biden's campaign, who ruled against the defense at every turn, will be in charge of the president's fate. By all accounts, not only is he winning close in the battleground states, he's put New Hampshire and Virginia in play, and maybe even New York. Tom Fitton, thanks so much, and how hard you work to expose all that stuff on the laptop. Judicial Watch, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for sharing the story.
You're welcome, Brian. Thank you.
All right, you got it.